It's always the key question, and how do you end up doing the research that you're doing? And honestly, even when I decided to pursue academia, I had no clue what academia was or what is it that we were doing, other than I'm gonna have a paycheck and they're gonna give me health insurance, and that was basically all I needed to know. And I spent most of my PhD without a clue of what is it that I actually care about, and I was just studying things that made sense for what they were teaching me, but I really didn't feel passionate about it until I started questioning myself politically, like what is it that I care about? And I started to gain political conscience by the end of my PhD. And that's when I realized that for me to be truly involved in my research, it needed to be tied to what I believe, like with the things that I want to see in the world. I'm currently writing the manuscript of my first book, and it's tentatively entitled Machorras, Embodying Identity Against Mexicanidad. And I'm using this specific word, machorras, that means, it's a pejorative term that it's used in Mexico and a lot of places in Latin America to describe masculine women that are just inadequate in terms of gender roles. So that deems them dissident, even though they don't have the choice of it. So I'm expanding the meaning of this to try to tie together all the communities and identities that just do not fit the regimes of the state, of the Mexican state, of what we understand as Mexicanidad. So this is why I'm studying it in Mexico, but also the Latinx diaspora in the US, because Mexicanidad is not contained by borders. And I'm studying it as a language that creates the illegibility of Blackness and the disposability of Indigenous and femme life. And what I'm trying to say with illegibility is that it exists, we see it. We know we have Black communities, but because of the mestizaje ideology, that's the mixed race ideology, it's so ingrained in how we are raised and how we think about Mexicanidad or Mexicanness, that even if we have Black communities, we just read them as something else. We just can place them as Black, because then it completely denies this idea that we're all mestizos, like we're all mixed race, which is a fantasy. But this has very material consequences for communities, Indigenous communities and Black communities in Mexico. Also studying migrations and displacement across the Americas. And this stemmed from a course that I designed for the specific needs that the students had at Williams College. They were just really interested about it. And I am a migrant myself, so I was like, why I have never questioned myself about the policies that create these ideas. So with the students and with the help of my colleagues in different departments, I put together materials from history, sociology, anthropology, cultural studies, feminist and queer theory, like a little bit of everything, trying to understand why do people migrate, right? Like that's the first thing that people need questions, because they're like, why they're coming here to steal all our jobs? And it's like, yeah, why they're coming here to steal all your jobs? Why do people is forced to migrate? So I'm seeing it from the perspective of being displaced from when they leave, not because they're choosing to migrate, it's because circumstances that ties together the government of the United States and Mexico that creates conditions from people from the Central America and South America to move north. I think that in academia, the thing that I love the most is teaching and designing new courses, but that are in touch, not only to my interest, but the students' interest and the reality that we live in. So there are courses that are relevant to what we care about right now. So this is why the migrations across the Americas was born, actually, with my collaboration with students and colleagues. Like I cannot take credit for it. I cannot take credit for any of my classes. It's always in collaboration. But this was the views that I have, the things that I keep teaching come from the understanding that a lot of my students had, because a lot of them were involved in activism in Texas and Arizona and New Mexico, and they worked directly with organizations and religious organizations that were helping migrants. So having their insight into how this works really helped me to understand myself processes that I was very naive. I had a very naive approach before my students enlightened me on this, and my colleagues from different departments suggesting readings that really helped me to understand that although it's a complex issue, it's something that can be unpacked really by understanding US imperialism and how this spreads across the Americas. So I'm very into visual culture. So I like for the students to learn how to analyze these things, because we are bombarded by images all the time, but how we understand them, it's very important. And I'm just thinking about one of the last classes that I taught. One of the last sessions that we had was about trauma porn, precisely because we're bombarded by these images of brown bodies always. In danger or dead, we're just exposing their trauma for the sake of the shock value of it, trying to create awareness of situations. And we see this also with Black people in the US. So I'm trying for them to understand that when we are analyzing cultural products, we're talking about real consequences for real people. So this is not only just in the books, or this is just an image that it's cool to share. Other thing that it's part also about my research is, because I study masculinities and femininities, I'm working right now on a project with my group of dragtivists in Mexico. And dragtivism means that we do activism, but doing drag. So we are understanding drag as a political performance that's kind of taking it back to what it was in New York City, when it was born in the ballrooms, especially created by trans women. My purpose when I started doing drag was precisely to do political interventions, and how we started was just going to the streets, to the street markets and the subway that are very gendered spaces in Mexico. And it was just like shocking people, like with this group of cis women, all in drag, because we do masculine drag. So they were just like, most of the times they wanted to yell things at us, but they just didn't know what to do with us. And I like that idea that they all of a sudden see all these elements of masculinity that they think they're just tied to cis men, and all of a sudden performed by all these cis women. Something that has been a little bit complex to add into the classroom in general is the use of non-binary language and also inclusive language in general. And I'm not blaming the students for this. It's just that if the university at large is not setting the example for this, I think they're moving towards that direction. But it was really complex last semester, when I feel like everyone thought that I was just crazy by doing this, and teaching the students how to use this inclusive language in Spanish. And I think it's something that honestly should be established for all the courses and all the languages, and I mean in every class, even if it's just French 101. I feel like these are things that they need to understand, because the world in general is moving towards that direction. So we cannot pretend that this is not a thing. And most of the people that I love, my community, my friends, are non-binary people. So by teaching this, it's not only I'm teaching something cool and it's edgy, it's just I'm teaching you how to address most of the people out there that are moving towards that direction. I just hope that my classes give them an insight on how they can start this very complicated road towards being more inclusive and more aware of that there's many other views in this world than the one that we have, and then we have to be respectful about other people's view, but not only respectful in the addressing, like they exist, but like also knowing how to make every space a space that receives all types of identity. So I guess this is what I'm trying to do in my courses too. But it has been a challenge, but I feel like challenge accepted. Research has a lot to do with activism, because it's not tied to activism. For me, it just loses its meaning. And because if I'm just doing it because I want to publish an article or a book, then it stops making sense, because I do want to make a difference, even if it's just a tiny bit, but I want to know that at least I tried.